Celine had always felt like a shadow in her own life. Born into a world ruled by ancient pacts and cursed bloodlines, she was promised to a bondmate she did not choose. Her days were measured by his whims, her heart weighed down by the invisible chains of the bond. The pack called it honor, she called it prison. The blood moon was rising, painting the night sky in deep crimson and silver streaks. Legends whispered that the moon's light could awaken powers dormant in those touched by magic, and Celine's heart raced with a mixture of fear and hope. Tonight, she would do something no one in her position had dared. She would break free. She moved through the forest that bordered her pack's territory, her steps silent over the frost-covered leaves. Every sound made her pulse quicken. The distant howl of a wolf, the whisper of wind through the bare trees. She knew her bondmate would never let her go willingly. If he discovered her plan, he would hunt her down, and the chains of the bond would tighten even further. Then she saw him, a stranger standing beneath the twisted limbs of an ancient oak. His presence was calm, yet it seemed to carry a strange power, as if the night itself obeyed him. His cloak flowed like liquid shadow, hiding most of his features. But his eyes glimmered in the moonlight, pale, almost silver, and unsettlingly knowing. "You seek freedom," he said, his voice low and certain. Celine hesitated. Every instinct screamed to run, yet she was already beyond the point of return. She had tried planning and scheming for months. But the thought of her bondmate's hands on her, the weight of his claim on her life, had driven her to desperation. "What price?" she asked, her voice trembling, though her eyes were fierce. "The mark," he said simply. "I can place it upon you. It will sever the hold your bondmate has over you. But it will bind you to a fate unknown, to a path you did not choose." Celine's heart hammered. To be free, even for a moment, even if it led her into danger, felt like salvation. She nodded, stepping closer, her hands shaking. The stranger extended his hand, revealing a small vial filled with ink as dark as night itself. "Place your hand here," he instructed, and she obeyed. The moment his fingers brushed her skin, a fire shot through her veins. It was not pain, not exactly, but a sharp awareness. As if every nerve in her body had suddenly awakened, she felt the chains of the bond loosen, slipping from her chest like smoke. Yet a strange pulse lingered, foreign, magical, and alive. The stranger drew a sigil across her wrist, swirling lines that seemed to dance with their own light. "This will protect you," he murmured. "But it will also mark you. Once done, there is no turning back." Celine closed her eyes, swallowing her fear. When she opened them, the mark was seared into her skin, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. Her bondmate's control was gone, or at least, it felt gone. For the first time in her life, she felt the thrilling, terrifying taste of freedom. The forest around her seemed to shiver, and then the stranger's figure blurred and dissolved like mist. The world tilted, colors bending and twisting, and Celine felt herself falling not down, but through the fabric of the world itself. The trees, the moon, even the cold wind, vanished into a swirling void of silver and red light. She screamed, but no sound emerged. When the world finally stopped spinning, Celine's eyes snapped open to find herself in a place she could not have imagined. The air was thick with incense and the scent of polished stone. Tall columns carved from dark marble reached toward the sky, and banners of black and silver swayed in a breeze that carried no sound. She was in a palace, a throne chamber so vast and imposing it made her entire life in the forest seem small and fragile. And there, seated upon a throne that seemed carved from shadow and steel, was the Alpha King. Kale's presence filled the room before his eyes even met hers. He was everything Celine had heard in legends. Tall, commanding, and terrifyingly beautiful. His hair was black as midnight, his armor gleaming faintly beneath the torchlight, and his eyes were sharp, assessing, and impossibly deep. Every step he took toward her was measured, deliberate, like a predator circling a prey that had just turned into something he could not ignore. "You," he said, his voice smooth but edged with power, "are far from where you belong." Celine tried to speak, tried to explain, but no words came. Her heart raced, pounding against her chest as if warning her to flee. Yet she could not move. She was rooted to the spot, the mark on her wrist pulsing faintly, almost in sync with Kale's heartbeat. "You bear a mark," Kale continued, his gaze locking onto hers. "A mark no mortal has carried for centuries. Tell me, who gave this to you?" I don't know," Selene whispered. Truth was, she had let a stranger mark her, but she had no idea why the magic had transported her here, to this throne room, to this king. She could feel the pull of the mark, drawing her toward something she did not yet understand. Kale's eyes narrowed. He rose from his throne, each step echoing across the marble floor like a drumbeat of fate. "No one enters my halls by accident," he said. "The mark chooses, not you. And now, you are bound to me, whether you wish it or not." Selene swallowed hard. She had escaped her bondmate, only to find herself in the grasp of an even greater power, one she could neither understand nor resist. Yet beneath her fear, a strange thrill coursed through her veins, a mix of awe, dread, and something dangerously close to longing. "You will speak," Kale said, stopping just a few paces away. "And you will explain everything, or the walls of this palace will remember your voice forever." Longer C. Kale C. Longer C. APP. Longer C. APP. Longer C. Longer C. Selene's gaze dropped to the mark on her wrist. It no longer burned, but it throbbed softly, as if alive, whispering promises she could not yet hear. She had taken a step into a world of shadows and power, leaving her old life behind, and she realized her journey had only just begun. The torches flickered, casting long, quivering shadows across the throne chamber. Kale studied her, his expression unreadable. Selene, trembling yet unbroken, raised her chin. She would survive. She had to. The stranger's mark had given her freedom, and freedom demanded courage. But just as she thought she might finally breathe, Kale leaned closer, his voice low and sharp, slicing through the quiet. "Do you know what you've become, Marked One? You belong to me now." Selene's heart caught in her throat. The word belong echoed in her mind, twisting her fear into something heavier, more complicated. She had escaped her bondmate, but now she was in the hands of an alpha king whose power dwarfed anything she had known. Her freedom had led her straight into the jaws of a new fate, one she could neither fight nor fully understand. And as Kale's eyes held hers, dark and unyielding, Selene realized with a shiver that the world she had stepped into would never let her go. The morning sun barely touched the throne chamber, yet Selene could feel the weight of the Alpha King's gaze still pressing against her back. Kale had not moved from where he had left her the night before. The air between them was charged with a tension she could neither name nor escape. Selene had escaped one form of control, only to find herself in another. But this was different. Kale's dominance was not cruel, it was sharp, precise, like a blade honed over centuries. His power radiated from him in every movement, every glance, every silent command. She felt drawn to it, even as it terrified her. A servant approached, bowing low. "Your Majesty requests your presence in the council chamber," the young man whispered to Selene, clearly unsure how to address her. The mark on her wrist pulsed faintly, as if reminding her that she was no ordinary guest. Selene nodded, swallowing her fear. She followed, her steps echoing on the polished marble floors, the banners of black and silver brushing her shoulders. Every corner of the palace seemed alive, whispering secrets of ancient battles and long-lost queens. She could feel the weight of history pressing down, reminding her that she was not in the realm of ordinary humans anymore. The council chamber was vast, with windows that looked out over forests black with shadows and mountains that gleamed like steel in the dawn. Lords and warriors from distant lands had gathered, their eyes curious and wary as Selene entered. Whispers rippled through the room, like wind over dry leaves. They sensed her, the mark upon her skin, even if they could not see it. Kale's voice cut through the murmurs. "This is the one," he said simply, gesturing toward Celine. "Marked by a power older than any of you, she walks among us now." The lords shifted uneasily. Celine's heart pounded in her chest. The power she carried was foreign, unpredictable, and yet it made her feel stronger than she had ever felt before. For the first time, she realized that freedom came with responsibility and danger. One of the older lords, a man with a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, spoke. "Alpha. What is her name? What clan does she belong to?" Celine opened her mouth, but Kale raised a hand. "She is mine," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "She comes from a distant land, beyond the reach of any pack known to us. Her past matters little. Her presence here is what matters." The council murmured again, but Kale's authority silenced any further questions. Celine felt a mixture of awe and fear. The Alpha King's power was absolute. Yet there was a strange kindness in the way he looked at her, not pity, not indulgence, but acknowledgement. He saw her, really saw her, in a way no one ever had. After the council dispersed, Kale led her through corridors lined with statues of past kings and queens. "You are stronger than you know," he said quietly. "And yet, you are fragile in ways you do not understand." Celine wanted to argue, to claim that she was no one special, just a girl trying to survive. But the words stuck in her throat. There was a truth in his gaze that she could not deny. She had changed. The mark had given her freedom from her old bondmate, yes, but it had also awakened something else, a power that pulsed beneath her skin, waiting to be understood. They reached a private courtyard, a garden of dark stones and silver-leafed trees. Moonlight, or perhaps the memory of it, still lingered faintly, casting the garden in a pale, ethereal glow. Kale stopped and turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "The mark. It is not just a seal of protection. It is a bond of power. It chooses its bearer, yes, but it also binds them to destiny." Celine traced her fingers over the sigil. "I only wanted to be free," she said softly. "I didn't know it would. Lead me here. Lead me to you." Kale's lips quirked, almost a smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "Freedom is never simple," he said. "It comes with chains you cannot see, with choices you cannot imagine. You are caught between your past and a future that will demand everything from you. And yet..." He paused, studying her. "There is a fire in you I have not seen in centuries." The words both thrilled and frightened her. A fire. She had thought she was only fleeing, only trying to survive. Yet here, with this man who commanded kingdoms, she felt her own power stir. The mark pulsed again, warm and alive, as if responding to his presence. Days passed in a blur of lessons and observation. Kale introduced her to the palace, to the warriors who served him with unwavering loyalty, and to the customs of a kingdom steeped in magic and history. Celine learned to move with grace, to speak with confidence, to meet the eyes of those who doubted her. And through it all, Kale was always there, watching, guiding, testing. The tension between them grew with each passing day. Every glance, every touch of his hand on her arm, every word spoken in hushed tones carried a weight she could not ignore. He was a storm contained in human form, dangerous, commanding, and yet impossible to resist. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, the palace alarms rang out. The gates were under attack. Rebel factions, angry at Kale's rule, had chosen this moment to strike. Chaos erupted in the courtyard as warriors clashed with intruders, swords ringing against armor, shouts piercing the night. Celine's instincts took over. The mark burned faintly on her wrist, and she felt a surge of courage unlike anything she had known. She moved through the chaos, her steps swift, her senses heightened. She found Kale at the front of the battle, his blade cutting through enemies with precision and fury. "Celine," he called, his voice carrying over the clash of steel. "Stay back. Stay back." But she could not. She could not stand by while he faced danger alone. Drawing on the power the mark had awakened, she summoned energy that rippled from her hands, throwing intruders off balance, shielding the warriors who fought beside them. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with something else, something powerful, unyielding. When the battle finally ended, the courtyard lay in ruins. Smoke curled into the sky, and the wounded cried for help. Kale stood before her, his chest heaving, his eyes locking onto hers. For the first time, he did not see her as fragile, nor as a girl to protect. He saw her as a force, a companion, a warrior. And perhaps, something more. "You," he said, voice low and filled with a mixture of awe and something Celine could not name, "have power beyond any mortal I have known. Tell me, do you understand what you carry?" Celine looked down at the mark, now faintly glowing beneath her skin. She did not fully understand. Not yet. But she had learned one thing. The mark was more than protection. It was a bond to Kale. A connection that neither of them could ignore. Kale stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "The mark chose you," he whispered, almost reverently. "But now I must ask, do you choose me?" Celine's heart caught. The question was more than words. It was a test, a promise, and a challenge all at once. She did not answer immediately. Her thoughts tumbled like storm clouds, torn between fear and desire, freedom and destiny. She realized that the life she had fled was gone, and that the path ahead, terrifying and unknown, was bound to Kale's world, his power, his life. As the night deepened, Celine felt the pull of the mark stronger than ever. It whispered of destinies, of choices, of a future she could not yet see clearly. And Kale, standing just inches away, waited, patient and unyielding, for the answer she did not yet have. In that moment, Celine understood the truth. Escape had brought her here, yes, but survival, freedom, and perhaps even love, would demand courage beyond anything she had imagined. And as the moon rose high above the shattered courtyard, she realized that the chains she had fled were nothing compared to the bonds that awaited her, and the fire that had begun to burn between them could either save them or destroy them both. The palace was quiet in the early hours, though silence in Kale's halls often carried more weight than the loudest battle. Celine walked through the corridors, her fingers brushing along the smooth stone walls. The mark on her wrist pulsed faintly, a soft warmth reminding her that she was no longer the same girl who had fled her bondmate. Every step she took through the palace felt like stepping deeper into another world, one of power, shadows, and secrets that had waited centuries to reveal themselves. She had learned much in the days since the attack on the courtyard. Kale had not just accepted her presence, he had tested her, pushed her, and watched her respond. She had survived the battle, saved lives, and proved herself capable. And yet, despite her achievements, an invisible tension grew between them. Every glance Kale cast, every subtle gesture, seemed laden with meaning, with power, and with the echo of something unspoken. Celine sat in the private garden once more, the moonlight filtering through the silver leaves. The night was calm, yet she could feel the stirrings of the palace around her. The distant shuffle of guards, the faint hum of magic that lingered in the air, and the quiet heartbeat of a kingdom that had endured centuries of wars and curses. She traced the mark on her wrist. Its lines seemed to shift faintly in the moonlight, almost like a living symbol. Questions she could not answer filled her mind. Who had truly marked her? Why had the stranger chosen her? And most importantly, what connection did the mark now create between her and Kale? A rustle in the shadows made her look up. Kale stepped into the moonlight, his presence commanding even in silence. His eyes, dark and unreadable, were fixed on her. "You are restless," he said softly, though there was no warmth in his voice. "Only observation." Celine met his gaze. "I am trying to understand this. All of it. The mark, the magic, the everything." Kale nodded slowly, stepping closer. You have power, he said. Power that is not fully yours, yet not entirely apart from you. It is dangerous, yes, but also necessary. It is tied to me, to my bloodline, and to a curse that has haunted my line for centuries. Celine frowned. A curse? Kale's expression darkened. Long ago, a queen I loved betrayed me. Her ambition and jealousy bound a curse upon my bloodline. Any union with another soul risks bringing ruin to both. That is why I have never chosen a queen since. That is why. You are unexpected. Celine's heart pounded. She had thought her life was dangerous before, running from a mate who controlled her. Now, she was in the presence of a man whose past and power dwarfed anything she had ever known, whose life and blood carried consequences beyond her understanding. You fear me, Kale said quietly. I can see it in your eyes. But you must understand. Fear is not the enemy. It is what tempers courage, what shapes choice. You will need that courage if you are to survive here, and if you are to survive me. Celine swallowed hard. His words were both a warning and an invitation. She wanted to protest, to insist that she was no one special, that she had escaped one danger and did not wish to face another. But the truth pressed upon her. She had changed. The mark had awakened something within her, something that made her stronger, faster, sharper. She was no longer just a girl fleeing a life she hated. She was a force. And Kale's presence only heightened it. The nights passed with lessons in both palace life and the subtle language of power. Kale did not teach her directly, but through his presence, his expectations, and the unspoken rules of his world, Celine learned quickly. She learned to read a room, to sense danger, to understand how her magic, the strange power tied to the mark, could be harnessed to protect herself and others. Yet with every lesson came tension. Kale's gaze lingered too long, his voice held unspoken weight, and every proximity carried a charged energy that Celine could not ignore. She found herself thinking of him even when she did not wish to, wondering what lay behind his stern eyes, and feeling a pull she could neither resist nor understand. Then, one evening, the truth about the stranger began to unravel. While exploring a hidden library within the palace, Celine discovered an ancient tome. Its pages whispered of magic older than kingdoms, of spirits that could shift fate lines, of marks that could sever bonds and redirect destiny. And in the margins, scrawled in a handwriting she somehow recognized in memory, were words that chilled her. The marked will walk paths chosen by fate, not by heart. The mark binds, protects, and awakens the spirit for trials to come. Celine's fingers trembled. The stranger who had seemed mortal was something far beyond her understanding. He had not just given her freedom. He had placed her into a destiny intertwined with Kale's, a destiny she did not yet comprehend. That night, as she sat in the garden once more, Kale appeared silently, as he always did. She did not look up immediately. She did not need to. He was always there, a shadow and a presence that could not be ignored. You have learned much, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. And yet, there is more than skill here. There is a bond forming, whether you wish it or not. It is the mark, yes, but also something deeper. Something that stirs in both of us. Celine's breath caught. She wanted to retreat, to tell him she was not ready, that she could not bear another bond, another chain, no matter how strange or powerful. Yet the pull between them was undeniable. She had seen it in the battle, in the way he had watched her, in the unspoken acknowledgement of her courage and strength. Kale, she whispered, I don't understand it. I don't know what this bond is. I only know that I feel it. His eyes softened, a rare glimpse of something beyond the icy armor he wore. It is not simple, he admitted. It is never simple for those who carry power, for those who are chosen by fate, or for those who have escaped one chain only to find themselves in another. But the choice is yours. Always yours. Mark it is. The wind stirred, rustling the silver leaves above them. Celine felt the mark pulse, warm and alive, as if responding to Kale's words. She realized that freedom was not simply running away. Freedom was understanding power, responsibility, and the bonds that connect lives. She had fled one master, only to find herself in a world where power and destiny intertwined with desire, loyalty, and danger. Days turned into nights, and Celine grew stronger, braver, more certain of her abilities. The mark had awakened not just courage, but clarity. She could sense the palace's hidden dangers, feel the flow of magic that lingered in its walls, and anticipate threats before they came. Yet she also felt the pull of Kale, the magnetic, dangerous, undeniable pull that tugged at her heart. Then, a shadow from the past emerged. One of Kale's spies brought news of a rival clan, one that sought to exploit Celine's mysterious arrival and the power she carried. Their emissaries had begun moving toward the kingdom, and with them came whispers of betrayal, curses, and threats that could undo everything Kale had built. Kale's face darkened as he processed the news. "They know," he said quietly. "They know of the mark, of you, and they will stop at nothing." Celine's stomach tightened. She had thought she understood danger when she fled her bondmate. She had thought she was prepared. But now, the threat was larger, older, and more personal. And yet, she did not feel fear alone. She felt determination. She had survived battles, learned the ways of the palace, and discovered power within herself that she had never imagined. She would face this threat not as a pawn, not as prey, but as a queen in her own right, bound to Kale by choice, by destiny, and perhaps by something more. That night, in the quiet of the palace, Kale approached her once more. "You have learned much," he said, his voice softer than usual, yet firm. "And now, the world will test you. Not just your power, but your heart. The mark chose you. Yes, but will you choose yourself? And me?" Celine's fingers brushed the glowing sigil on her wrist. She did not yet have all the answers, and she could not yet see the path ahead. But one truth burned bright within her. The mark had given her courage, and courage demanded action. She would face the coming trials, face the enemies, and face Kale himself not with fear, but with the fire that had begun to burn in her soul. The moon rose high above the palace, casting silver light across the gardens. In its glow, the mark shimmered, alive and vibrant. Celine looked up at Kale, whose presence filled the night, and realized that their fates were now intertwined. Whatever came next, war, betrayal, love, or death, they would face it together. And yet, deep within her, a question lingered, sharp and insistent. Could a heart bound by magic truly choose freely? Could freedom exist in a world of destiny and power? She did not have the answer, but she knew one thing. The trials had only just begun, and the fire between them, dangerous, consuming, and undeniable, was far from extinguished. The palace was alive with tension. Word of the approaching rival clan had spread like wildfire, and every hallway and tower brimmed with anticipation. Celine stood on the balcony, her fingers tracing the mark on her wrist. It pulsed faintly, warm and steady, a constant reminder of the power and destiny now woven into her life. She had changed since that first night she had awoken in Kale's throne room. She had faced her fears, discovered courage, and learned to wield the strange power the mark had awakened in her. She was no longer the frightened girl fleeing her bondmate. She was a force in her own right, and the kingdom now looked to her as much as it did to Kale. Kale joined her silently. His presence was commanding, yet there was a softness in his gaze reserved only for her. "The time has come," he said. "They will strike at dawn, and we must be ready. Not just with swords, but with every skill, every plan, and every ounce of power we possess." Celine nodded, feeling a thrill of determination. "I am ready," she said. "We face this together, Kale. Whatever comes, I will stand by you. Kale's eyes darkened with intensity. You speak as a queen, not a pawn. Good. His hand brushed hers, and she felt the warmth of the mark respond, pulsing stronger, as if recognizing her courage and commitment. Night fell, and the palace prepared for battle. Guards sharpened blades, warriors checked armor, and mages chanted quietly, weaving protective wards around the walls. Celine moved among them, her heart steady, her mind focused. She had learned much about strategy and combat, but she also understood that courage came from the heart as much as skill. When the first signs of the rival clan appeared, dark silhouettes against the forested horizon, Celine felt the surge of the mark awaken fully. Energy flowed through her, sharpening her senses and heightening her reflexes. She moved to Kale's side, standing tall beside him as the army of their enemies approached. The battle began with the clash of steel, the roar of war cries, and the thunder of hooves against the earth. Kale fought with unmatched skill, every movement precise, powerful, and lethal. Celine's magic flared, creating shields, deflecting attacks, and giving their warriors the edge they needed. She was no longer a bystander. She was a warrior, a queen in the making, and a force that none could ignore. Amid the chaos, Celine noticed a group of enemy warriors attempting to flank Kale. Without hesitation, she unleashed a surge of power from the mark, sending them tumbling backward. Kale caught her eye, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to stop. They were not just allies in battle, they were a team, a bond forged through fire, courage, and trust. As the battle reached its climax, Celine realized the true test was not just the enemy outside, but the curse that had haunted Kale's bloodline for centuries. The curse had whispered through his veins, threatening to consume any bond he formed, any love he dared to hold. If they failed, it would destroy them both. Kale, sensing her realization, moved closer. We must face it together, he said, his voice low and steady. The curse is powerful, but not stronger than the will to protect what we choose. Celine nodded, summoning all the energy the mark had given her. She stepped forward, placing her hands on Kale's chest. The mark pulsed brightly, and a wave of light and warmth radiated outward, intertwining with Kale's own power. For the first time, the curse that had lingered for centuries met resistance not from swords or shields, but from choice, courage, and love. The light expanded, flowing through the palace, through the warriors, and into the enemy ranks. Confusion rippled through the attackers, their advance faltering as if the world itself had shifted. Kale seized the moment, his blade moving with unstoppable precision. And together, he and Celine turned the tide of battle. When the last enemy had fled, silence fell over the battlefield. Smoke rose from the ground, and the warriors looked to Celine and Kale with awe and respect. They had not only survived, they had triumphed. But more importantly, Celine realized something deeper. She had chosen her path, and in doing so, she had chosen Kale. Not because of the mark, not because of destiny, but because of her own heart. Kale lowered his sword, stepping toward her. He brushed a hand across her cheek, and she felt a warmth unlike any magic she had known. You have done more than survive, he said softly. You have faced fear, embraced power, and stood by me. And in that, you have chosen wisely. Celine smiled, a mix of relief and triumph washing over her. We faced it together, she said, and we will face whatever comes next. Together. No, the palace walls, once heavy with tension and fear, seemed lighter now, filled with a sense of hope and renewal. The curse that had haunted Kale's bloodline was broken, not by magic alone, but by courage, trust, and the bond they had forged. The mark on Celine's wrist glowed faintly, a reminder of the path she had walked, the choices she had made, and the strength she had discovered within herself. In the quiet that followed the battle, Kale took Celine's hands in his. The mark chose you, he said. But you chose yourself. And in doing so, you chose me. That choice makes you my queen. Not by fate, but by will. Celine felt a warmth fill her chest, a sense of peace she had never known. The danger, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it had led her here, to a place where she was free, powerful, and truly herself. And beside her stood KL, not as a master, not as a predator, but as a partner, a king who had learned that love was not dominance, but trust. The first rays of dawn touched the palace, casting golden light across the towers and banners. Celine looked out over the kingdom, feeling the pulse of life and energy that flowed through it. She knew that challenges would come again, that life would demand courage and wisdom, but she also knew she was ready. She had been tested, transformed, and strengthened. She was no longer a girl fleeing a bondmate. She was a queen, a warrior, and a woman who had chosen her own destiny. Kale stepped beside her, his gaze on the horizon. "We have survived fate," he said, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "And now, we will carve our own legend." Celine smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. "Together," she whispered. The mark pulsed once more, faint and steady, as if acknowledging her choice, her courage, and the bond she had forged. It had been a symbol of escape, then a symbol of power, and now it was a symbol of love and partnership, a reminder that freedom and destiny could coexist when guided by heart and will. The palace, the kingdom, and the warriors who served them seemed to breathe in harmony, as if the very world recognized the bond they had formed. Celine knew that the story of their triumph would be told for generations, not just for the battles fought, but for the courage to choose love, trust, and self-determination above all else. As the sun rose fully, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, Celine and Kale stood side by side. They were no longer two souls bound by circumstance or destiny alone. They were partners, equals, and warriors who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Together. And in that quiet, radiant moment, Celine realized the truth she had been searching for all along. True freedom was not the absence of chains, it was the courage to choose, to stand, and to love, even when the world demanded surrender. The mark on her wrist pulsed one final time in the morning light, gentle and steady, a promise of power, love, and destiny fulfilled. And Celine, once a girl fleeing a bondmate, now stood as a queen who had carved her own path, beside the Alpha King, who had learned that strength and heart were inseparable.